Hello and welcome to my first ever video, and I will be showing you how to be making this doll. This is my second ever custom doll and I hope you enjoy the process. Firstly, I put a doll head onto a doll stand and I covered her in cling film. This is so I can make the wig without actually damaging the head. Then I got some red fabric. I wanted red so that it went with the colour of the hair, and I measured it to shape. Once I was okay with that, I cut out a few small holes just so I could get the ears through without it being a hassle, and you can see me now just trying to see if it fits on the doll head. After I was okay with the shape, I got an elastic band and I tied it tight around the head so that the fabric stayed on nice and firm. And now the gluing begins. So what I did then was paint the fabric multiple times with a lot of PVA glue, and it was really fun. I did this with multiple layers so that it was nice and thick and solid. I'm not gonna lie, I was very impatient. I could not wait for the one layer of glue to dry before starting the next, so I just kept going. I cut the fabric so that it was in shape of the wig I wanted. So here I'm using some fluffy wool stuff. I will link below where I got it from, and thank you to the creator who sent it to me. This was my first ever wig, so this was going to be interesting. I started by folding the layers of wefts. Well, they're not really wefts, they don't have the end part of them, but I made makeshift wefts and glued little lines of the wig cap and stuck them down. Make sure they were nice and firm. You can see with my thumb I slightly pushed and pulled them up a bit just to get as much hair as I could covering the wig cap. And then I just kept going up and up with the layers of red. I wanted only this first layer to be red though. I want to add a bit more spice to this. Okay, so you can actually see I did it a bit cheekily, but I added the black hair off camera. And this bit I'm showing how I mixed the two colours together so that I had a cool mixing effect without it being too thick. After I'd done the red along the bottom, I had a black centre of hair, and the rest, which I am putting on now, is the blend of the two. This is so that it has a cool fading effect with them blending together, with some bits more accentuated for certain colours, such as the back being more black and the sides being more red. You can actually see here as I'm trying to find ways to do it around the ears without it being too much of a hassle. For my first wig, it probably wasn't a good idea to do it on a doll with wolf ears, as that definitely did pose a challenge. However, you know what? I think it went okay, so I guess I did a good job. The reason I chose this doll for my first one actually was because of the fact that whilst I bought a bulk of dolls, I thought I would start with the ones that were less mobile from the last wave of the dolls, which were Monster High. And I thought as they weren't mobile, it meant that if I made a mistake, it would be okay because I could save them all difficult and more complex dolls for later on and start with these ones, so any mistakes I made would be okay. And this is where it became a challenge. I was trying to get the parting correct, and as I wasn't entirely sure how to do it with the glue, I decided what I'd do was I'd glue it facing one way, and then once the glue had dried, I would flip the hair over to face the other way. I thought that way it would mean that it would not show the glue as prominently as if I just glued it down. This next bit was a complete challenge. I got little fluff bits from the hair and I wanted to put them where the ears would be, so it looked like little poofy parts where the ears were. However, trying to glue the inside of the wig and sticking them through the inside seemed a lot harder than I initially thought, as the hair would get stuck in each other. However, I realised if I just did it from the outside way and pushed it down instead of trying to pull it through, it meant that the hair wouldn't get caught on the glue in the process. After all of this, it meant that the wig was finally done and I could put it on the side for when I finally needed to use it later. Finally on to the impending doom of the face up. I had only done one before, but you know what, I think it turned out okay. So what I did here was I started out by spraying the head with Mr. Super Clear, hence the wearing the gloves, and started with a light orange pastel for blush. I wanted to slowly fade up the colours so if I made any mistakes then I could easily get rid of them. I say this, but then I realised that the dark brown I was trying to use for the contour wasn't working, so I ended up just switching to a dark black colour for the contour. This was because I wanted the character to be a very contrasting red and black anyway, so I wanted to have very prominent shadows. It didn't necessarily fit with the skin tone at this current time, however I wanted to blend it out so that it would fade into it nicely. This would take a lot of building up with the colours, however after a lot of work and a lot of dedication I was able to make it look a bit more naturalistic, I think. I went in with the jaw and I also went around the eyebrows and the nose. Using the same orange, I went over the ears to add a little bit of texture so that they looked a little bit more realistic and three-dimensional. This was just along the outside so that it gave it a bit more shadows and so you could see them more. I then added a bit of red on the inside as well, so that it gave it a bit more depth and more texture instead of being just one colour. I then went in with a black chalk along the ears just to give it a bit more of a shadow and make them stand out a lot more. This was to add a bit more depth as well as dimensions to the ears. Every time I was happy with how it was looking, I decided to spray it to set it a bit more with some more Mr. Super Clear, just so that I could build up and add a bit more layer and dimension and make it a bit more pigmented. I then added a bit more red along the cheeks and the eyelids so that it would be a bit more bold and more popping with the colour of bright orange and red for the highlighting tones. I finished her off with a little bit of highlight of yellow and white. After one final coat of Mr. Super Clear, I went on to the eyes. This was something I was dreading, as I knew if I made any mistake it would be a lot more prominent, especially on a three-dimensional face. It would mean that if I made the pupils out of place, or if I made it too lopsided or too large on one side to the other, it would be a lot more noticeable, and I was very anxious to do this on something I hadn't done before. I started off with a light brown, however I thought that a more darker colour like black would show up a bit more. And once I'd done the eyes and the eyelids, I went on to trying to fill in the rest of the eye. I knew that it wouldn't show up perfectly straight away, but I was okay with that. I just wanted to make sure that I had a basic outline. I loved the idea of like the little foxy cat centre eye thing, so I really tried to do that. And there you can see I attempted to make a mouldable eraser, but it didn't work, so I just grabbed a pencil and tried to rub it out. That was because I felt the eye was too high up compared to the other eye, so I thought I would lower it down, try to make it more even in shape. The same thing happened to the pupil, as I felt like it was slightly out of place. Okay, here you can see I added a bit more blush and eyeshadow with the powdered chalk, and this was just to give it a little bit more oomph. Now that I had the outline of the eyes, I could add a little bit more surrounding the eye itself. I didn't want to do too many coats of Mr. Super Clear, doing one layer of one thing in spray, then the next in spray. So instead of doing the eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and all that separately, I tried to do little things at the same time. So adding layers of dimension to the skin tones or the lips, I wanted to do before I sprayed another layer. That's why you can see I'm just touching it up here. The lips were a little more difficult. I wanted a darker tone to complement the eyes, but I didn't want it too dark that it would be too dramatic and bold. It didn't necessarily work straight away, so I added a bit more black and purple just to give a bit more dimensions, but I wasn't too happy with the result. For this reason, I went over it a bit more with the lighter shades. I tried to rub it out, it didn't really work. I ended up just using pencils to try and give it a bit more dimension, make it look a little more full, and luckily I think it worked when I added some more of the lighter tones with the red pencil. I loved the idea of getting like the little dimple areas in, so I attempted to get there. It didn't necessarily turn out how I wanted to, but hey, it's a first time for everything, right? I was so excited for. I added a bit more of a darker shadow to the outside of the eye, just so that I could give it more of a smoky effect. with it blending with the blush and eyeshadow already there. And then I added veins. I was so desperate to do this with this doll as it was going to be a wolf inspired, so I thought, you know what, it would be so cool. I made a mistake going a bit too far on the right side of her face, however I was able to make it work. And then I went in with the paint. Obviously, this is acrylic. I tried watercolour with my last one and didn't work as well as this, so I think I'm definitely sticking to acrylic for the future. Luckily, the acrylic paint was very kind, so that if ever I made a mistake, I could easily go over it and try to touch up the mistakes I made. I feel like the white was really bold compared to the rest of the dark eyeshadow, which I really lived for. I loved it, and I really wanted the eyes to be very noticeable. The yellow didn't turn up straight away, however I was sure already that I would have to add multiple layers, so that's what I did. I just kept working them up, adding layer to layer as soon as it dried, or when it got close to drying, so that I could make sure that they had different layers. I then started to add little bits of different tones on the upper side, just so that under the eyelid it looked like it had a bit more of a shadow. Give the eyes a bit more of a dimension, if you get what I mean. I then started using a needle as I felt like I had a bit more control with that as I started going in with the pupils. I wanted the pupils to also go under the eyelid because I thought it would give a really cool effect, and I love how it looks in anime. So I tried doing it myself, and I think it turned out well because it did give quite a bold, dramatic difference to the rest of the eye. I added a final coat and layer of that dark colour of the eyelid with a little bit more darker tone of the paint I was using. And then after I'd done that and done the outside of the eye, I added a bit more of the lighter paints around the outside just so that you could still see the lighter colours as well. This was so hard, but I didn't want her to look just flat, so I wanted to try and add a water duct. It was really hard. I haven't got the knack of it yet, but if I keep practicing, maybe I will. But here you see me using the needle to try and slowly get the look of the water duct right. This included a bit of highlighting and shading, which didn't necessarily work, but hey, it's a first time for everything, and this is my first time trying to use acrylics on a doll. This next bit was terrifying. I was trying to do the eyeliner, and I can't even do eyeliner on me. This included the lashes, and I still can't draw eyelashes and make them look really nice and fancy, so I knew this was going to be a huge challenge. But I kept trying, and I think they turned out okay. One was slightly lopsided, but I think it worked. And then once I had the eyelashes down, the eyeliner went on top, and there we go. Once the face up was done, I put the wig on and I could go on to the next part, which was the fluffy ears. I was so excited for this. I wanted the ears to be fluffy and part of the hair, so I got a bit of the red wool, cut it down, and I stuck it to the outside facing inwards. I did this just so that it would follow the natural hair direction I thought I've seen ears go in. After giving them a bit of a trim, I went in for a second layer just so I could add it up and give it more of a thickness. One final trim just to make sure the floofy little parts were more accurately done, and then I went on to the next part. Oh, also I should probably mention that I did paint the head at the end, just so that the ears would look a bit better when I put this on, just so there wasn't anything sticking out. And as you can see, now I'm putting on the black hair, just slowly layering it from top downwards as that looks more natural for the way the hair lies, and I wanted it to make sure that the hair followed the direction hair would naturally fall. Once the first ear was done, I was finally able to give it a bit of a trim and go on to the second one. I made sure to move some of the hair out of the way so that I was able to do the ear without getting glue in the hair, to the best of my ability at least. Once both the ears were done, I made sure to give them a bit of a trim and move the hair back to their natural falling position, just so that it fit more naturally on the head. I then gave the hair a little bit of a straighten with my curling iron, just so that I was able to make sure that it was a little more flat without pouring water over the head and disrupting the glue. Then I went on to the outfit. At first I was thinking about doing a cool cape with a short sleeve top and shorts or trousers, but then I realised I had this really cool outfit in my stock box and thought, you know what, I think this would be really cool. I just wanted it a different colour, so I went over the blue and yellow colour with a bit of a red acrylic paint, just to give it a little bit more of the colour palette that I'm using for this doll, and so it doesn't clash. I had no clue if this would turn out okay or if the paint would make it crispy and unmovable, but luckily it was okay. It gave it a bit more of a leathery texture, but I think that just added to the outfit a bit more. As you can see, I had to go over the paint multiple times just to make sure that the paint was covering the pattern completely, as the darker shades were trying to poke through. If at any point I went over the line with the red paint, I would go over it again in the future with black paint just so I could even up the edges. Once that was done, I decided to grab the shoes I was going to use and sand them down. I put a bit of hot glue in the middle of them just to give them a bit more layer and so that they looked a bit more volume. I didn't want the electric shape of them, I just wanted the boot. So I tried sanding it. It actually didn't work, so I ended up just cutting off the electric bolt on the outside so it looked a bit more steady flowing and less like a bubble. The next bit was pretty terrifying. I grabbed this pointy tool thing I have and I heated it up with a hairdryer. Then I kept going back to the shoe and using it to melt the plastic glue into it so that it melted and folded along the movements of the shoe a bit more. This was so that instead of just bulking out at random areas, it looked more like it's blending and a part of the shoe and the original plastic and not just random glue sticking out of nowhere. And here's the doll, completely done. I did paint the shoes off camera, my phone ran out of storage, I had to sort that out, pretty interesting. I also painted the belt that I have, and that was the design. I then got some fabric to make the cloak, and as you can see I got a pattern, which I will link in the description, which I used double-sided to make the cloak. As the fabric was printed out, I just wanted to do a simple stitch along the hem just to give it a nice finish without the fabric threading. This took a lot longer than I originally intended, and that's because every time I tried to sew along it, I tried to make sure each thread was tiny going through so that you couldn't see thread or string at all on the other side. I swear knots are my biggest enemy when it comes to sewing. Once this was done, I glued it onto the shoulder blades of the doll's outfit and put little beads along the side that I had made with hot glue and paint, and then I was done. And here is the final result. So I think I did a good job considering this was my second attempt at a custom doll, but you know, I think I did pretty good and I really enjoyed doing this project. So I hope you stick with me for the future as I am hoping to do some more projects again. So I hope you enjoyed!